Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. It's lovely to have you here with us on this Thursday. Back in studio, Titans practice is closed to the media today. We'll be back out at St. Thomas Sports Park tomorrow, but we're happy to have you for the next 3 hours. 615-737-1045. That's the number. I got details this morning on DeAndre Hopkins' contract structure, and we'll get to that here in just a minute. But we hear the advertisements on this radio station the same way that you do, because while I'm shuffling in here at 9:58:59, I was early today, the commercials are playing as Ramon, Kayla, and Will, and Lucas and I, we shift change before our show starts, and there was a commercial this morning, Bud, that caught my attention. Now, this has nothing to do with any kind of political affiliation whatsoever, other than the fact that this individual is apparently running for office. Who is Ross Pulley, and why is he a current SEC official? Is that what he said in his advertisement?
Russ Pulley.
That's what I said.
You said Ross Pulley.
No, it just sounded like Ross Pulley.
It's not Ross from Friends. It's Russ.
Maybe I'm a little congested. I'm sorry.
It's Russ, as in...
I'm so happy we have reasons to use that still. It's like Julio. Every once in a while, it'll just make an appearance, and it makes me happy to hear it. But yes, who is Russ Pulley? Why is he running for office, and why is he touting his years as an SEC official as the reason that you should give him his vote? That's hilarious to me. Does that not feel like a wild conflict of interest if he's running for office in the state of Tennessee? We need to find out if he's an active SEC official, because I thought I might have misheard the commercial wrong, but that made me laugh out loud.
No, that's right.
So, like,
what, SEC officials can't run for office? Who are you to decide?
Well, he's running for office in the state of Tennessee. One would assume that he's going to officiate more than just Tennessee games. Does that not indicate some kind of inherent bias, no matter how often he says, no, I don't root for the Vols or anything like that? I have no idea what his fan allegiance is, if he has any whatsoever.
He's already a Metro Councilman. He's been an SEC umpire and Metro Councilman simultaneously.
Okay, that does not, to me, indicate that just because he has already been made an elected official, to cite our political election system, does not necessarily give me great confidence in that being something that should exist.
What are you alleging?
Nothing at all, other than it made me laugh out loud to hear an active SEC official running for some kind of elected position and citing as his resume, yeah, I've been an official in the SEC for 20-something years. I'm getting ready for my 26th or 27th season. What? Sir. Eric White says, who are you people to decide? Nobody, I guess. I mean, other than, I early voted. Hey, I hope everybody else did too.
Long as he wasn't the one to call forward progress on Jalen Wright in the Music City Bowl a couple years ago.
That's what I'm saying.
He's good.
Does that not just foster an environment for those things to exist? Now every fan in the state of Tennessee is probably going to donate to, I shouldn't. I feel like I'm doing a political ad in ways that I shouldn't be. I'm just saying that seems like something that should not be.
Here's $200. Go Vols, winky face.
Yeah, he's in his campaign election fund. Just unbelievable. Red says, I thought he was talking about the Securities and Exchange Commission. No, I swear to God, like SEC football. It may not be. I don't know if he's a football official.
He is an official. Yes, he's a football official.
A football official.
Yes.
That's wild. Okay. Anyway, you guys want to talk about DeAndre Hopkins' contract situation? So we have details courtesy of Over the Cap on the structure of DeAndre Hopkins' contract. Now we've known obviously that he has agreed to terms for. It's been probably 10 days, I think, at this point. And I think this is the first time that I've seen it. I actually saw Zach Lyons, who hosts the Football and Other F Words podcast, tweeted out this morning that there were details available. And then I checked Over the Cap after I saw Zach's tweet and saw the full contract details there. So we knew the general outline of the contract, 2 years, 26. the ability to go up to $32 million with incentives. We knew what the incentives were from Ian Rappaport, how it's structured based on the amount of money, basically an additional $3 million that he can earn should he max out on all of his incentives in each year. So, in addition to that, the deal actually is 2 years, $25.5 million. So not quite 26, but 2 years, 25.5. 3 void years included in this contract, and he will get $10.98 million guaranteed with a $9.815 million signing bonus. That means in the total structure of it, or the total structure of it for 2023, a $3.668 million cap hit, which gives the Titans just under $13 million in cap room to still make a move and to have financial flexibility should, whatever football practice and preseason games and regular season games brings to the health of the roster. It gives you some flexibility to be able to sign dudes. So obviously that cap hit goes up substantially in the second year of the deal in 2024. 15.963 is what it will inflate to. But at that point, the Titans will have significantly more cap space to be able to handle that DeAndre Hopkins contract. So the outright, if they cut him prior to, let me look at the dates on the dead money situation. If they cut him next year, pre-June 1st, they would incur a dead cap hit of $7.852 million, but it would save them 8.1 and change. So that is the entire structure of the contract that is publicly is there for public consumption, courtesy of Over the Cap. I haven't looked at Spot Track yet this morning. I typically find Over the Cap to be a little more detailed in all the kind of workout bonuses and per game roster bonuses and things like that. Both are useful resources, but Over the Cap does have a little bit more detail as to the entirety of the structure of the contract. So it works, right? It's the thing that we talked about, I think, at some point during the summer. A 2-year deal made the most sense for them because of how little cap room they have this year and how much more cap room they have next year. And, whether it works out for DeAndre Hopkins this year, obviously, if you're a Titans fan, you very much want it too. But it does give you flexibility to move on from him. Dead money is not something that you ever want to incur too much of. And certainly paying Julio Jones or the continued carryover of dead money from Julio Jones' contract is the thing that I think loomed the largest, or at least in recent memory, of trying to get out of bad deals or get out from under bad deals. But the Hopkins contract, I think it works for everybody, right? It allows him the opportunity to make the kind of money that he wanted to make. Probably the best structure of a contract that he had out there. I don't know whether the Patriots were interested in having him just for the 1 year or if 2 years was their preference as well. But you understood why he took it, and you understood why it made the most sense for the Titans.
And we also know when he will be sporting the Oilers uniforms along with everybody else.
We sure do, bud. That was put out by the team this morning. They will wear the Houston Oilers jerseys again at home twice this season. They will do so after the bye against the Atlanta Falcons on October the 29th, and then again against the Houston Texans at home, as we all hoped that they might, on December 17th. So those are the 2 dates for the Houston Oilers uniforms. I had a question on Primetime last night that I was not able to Google, just a quick Google search, find the answer for. Are they allowed to change the symbols, like the logos on the field? I mean, theoretically, there's not necessarily a rule that I could find that like prevented them, as long as the playing surface, the integrity of the playing surface is okay. Like they just would at that point, instead of repainting the Titans logo from where or whatever, they could theoretically just put the Oilers logo at midfield.
I would think so. I'm trying to think of an example because it's a unique thing that it's a throwback that is almost an entirely different brand, which you don't really see very often in sports.
Which is kind of the root of the conflict between the former city that hosted this particular franchise in the current city that it now exists in.
But yeah, I think, I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, look what the Browns have been doing with their midfield. I mean, it's looked like something different, I feel like, multiple times over the years.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's like if they do it once, does it have to stay there, right? Like if you are announcing, because I felt like that was did the Browns have that alternate logo at midfield the entire season? I'm not sure.
The weird like elf looking thing.
Yeah, the creepy little elf dude, Brownie the elf. Because I feel like the Browns have more alternate logos than any NFL franchise. I feel like they've got the bulldog, they've got the weird elf character, they've got just the brown plain helmet. Fort 0904 in the F&M Bank chat. You can also interact there with the show, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch if you would like to live stream these things. Didn't they say they were doing the end zones Oiler themed? Let me go back and look at the press release. I will. That should be an easy enough thing for me to do. Either way, we do know the 2 dates that they'll wear the uniforms. We know that both of these events, both of these occurrences will be at home, and that the Falcons. Man, wouldn't it be cool if the Falcons wore throwback uniforms too?
Yeah, the throwback red helmets would be cool.
They're
a cool matchup.
I would love to see an old school uniform matchup that way. Okay, so of everything that I can see that's being listed in the announcement email that the team sent out on July the 23rd, revealed the Oilers uniforms for the 2023 season. It's mostly just details about the uniforms themselves, and where you can go to buy them, which apparently now everything but like mediums and smalls is sold out. If I'm to believe the many screenshots that I've seen of you guys tweeting vigorously at the Titans official Pro Shop Twitter account trying to get a hold of some more jerseys. Are we still calling them tweets? I just
Yes.
caught up on everything that's happening with Twitter last night. Are we still calling them tweets?
Yes.
My on my phone, the logo is still a bird. So the Bird app is not dead, despite it being now known as X. I'm never going to call it X.
I'll not call it X. No. Elon can do whatever he wants. No. Over my dead body, I will not call it X.
It's kind of like a Shaq Leonard, Darius Leonard thing. Like, I feel like begrudgingly I'm gonna have to call him Shaq Leonard, even though my entire life and his entire professional career he's
That's
been Darius.
different, though. That's different. That is his name. He gets to do whatever he wants with his name. Twitter may technically belong to Elon, but it's not Elon's. It's ours. I will not call it X.
We've poured too much blood, sweat, hours, and tears, literally, into that godforsaken Bird app. Be damned if you're going to change it on us now. All right. Let's talk about the key to the Titans season. Now, you might think that individual practiced with the Tennessee Titans yesterday for the first time in DeAndre Hopkins, and that is, of course, a piece of the puzzle. But the biggest key to the Titans season is something that Greg Cosell broke down yesterday on the newest episode of The Install that he and I did. We will let you hear from Greg on that coming up next. So we all think we know what the key to the Titans' season is, right? That's the guy that they just signed here recently. That's going to change everything, yes? Well, certainly, it's going to have a huge impact on everything that they're trying to do. It's going to alleviate a lot of the burden on the quarterback, on the existing skill position players, and just generally provided durability. Always got to put in the health provision. So we can't guarantee injuries or lack thereof. I mean, we can guarantee injuries, but we can't guarantee who they will happen to or when they will happen. It's just the nature of the sport. But is there something deeper that we're glossing over just by nature of DeAndre Hopkins' presence on the roster? Lucas, I don't know if you saw this during practice yesterday. In fact, it might have been the point where during SEC observations, we played the Joe Milton interview and I went to watch a little more practice. What Jeff Simmons did to Daniel Brunskill. Now, I do not have. He's a very good professional offensive lineman in terms of to have a player who can play theoretically all 5 positions is an asset to your football team, and I'm talking about Brunskill. He's your starting right guard this year. Just because he does have that versatility as an asset does not necessarily make him a good football player at any one position. It just means that he can do a lot of things, and that makes him valuable. Daniel Brunskill, having gone back and watched him and having gone back and read the work of Brandon Thorne, for those of you who are deep dive NFL football, well, just offensive line junkies, Brandon Thorne's trench analysis of offensive linemen and defensive linemen, I don't think there's anybody better who helps me understand just how little I understand about offensive line play. His analysis of Daniel Brunskill has not been overwhelmingly positive. Now, this was made even more evident to me when, even without pads on yesterday, Jeff Simmons is literally ragdolling that human being and running by him, running down the field afterwards, screaming too easy at every other player on the field. Now, that might be too easy because he's Jeff Simmons. And Jeff Simmons makes a lot of good players look like that, makes a lot of football players look like that.
I was going to say, are we going to do this thing where we take away overarching just observations and takeaways and blanket statements for the season after one non-padded practice against one of the top 3 best defensive tackles in the league?
No, I'm just using it to set up my point, is that the offensive line is as important, if not more important, than DeAndre Hopkins is this year. Their success or their failure will dictate a lot of what this team is able to accomplish, a lot of how you will perceive offensive coordinator Tim Kelly, a lot of how you will look at Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill or whomever plays with / behind this year's offensive line group. I'm not trying to make any grand assessments from one non-padded practice because Jeff did that. Actually, Arden Key did that to Andre Dillard in the spring. And, you know, to see that is like, okay, you should not be on the ground as an offensive lineman in spring practice. But also, Vrabel has them practicing, you know, with pretty high effort and speed, despite there not being pads on, right? That's the thing that he keeps coming back to. The best teams that I've been on understand how to practice even with the pads off. Russell says in the F&M Bank chat, give me literally one reason I should believe in the Titans' offensive line. Well, I mean,
it's different. I mean, it is a different group from 2022.
Correct.
That is one reason.
Dennis Daly no longer occupies your left tackle spot is the biggest reason that I can give you for belief in this Titans offensive line. Now, is Dillard going to be so much better that you don't have to worry about your left tackle situation? Nobody is saying that. He is a pretty significant question mark. If it pans out, then they're in great standing. They've got a left tackle at $10 million for the next 2 or 3 years. If he pans out, he couldn't crack the Eagles lineup. It's a pretty tough lineup to crack. We know that they only thought of him as a left tackle. and that his versatility is not something that you can lean on. So if he doesn't pan out at left tackle, you're talking about shifting around a whole bunch of other stuff. A lot of their success is going to be predicated on him succeeding at the left tackle position.
Maybe more so than whoever steps in for NPF at right tackle in the first 6 weeks.
I 100% think so. And listen, there are pass rushers on both the left and the right side of defensive lines. Right now, it's not like just because left tackle typically garners more value from the league, you have to be just as athletic and just as skilled as a right tackle in this modern iteration of the NFL as you do the left. But the point being, Greg Cosell and I were talking about this yesterday. We just put out a new episode of The Install. It's available in your podcast feeds. It's also available on 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel if you would like to watch the full episode of Greg and I each Wednesday. And so Greg and I were talking about DeAndre Hopkins for obvious reasons, and then Greg started to branch that out a little bit as to what he thinks of this Titans collection of offensive players, from quarterback to offensive line to wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs, to kind of assess how he feels about this team heading into the preseason.
And, you and I both know that the number one key to this offense will be the offensive line, because they actually do not have, and again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves and make people think that I think the Titans are a top 5 team in the league and they're great. But you know what? With Hopkins now and assuming development of younger players, you have to assume that. They're drafted. Burks was a first-round pick. Chig did well last year in his opportunities. You have to assume continued development. They still have Derrick Henry. If this offensive line can at least be average to slightly better than average, this is not really a bad group on the offensive side of the ball, Buck. I mean, again, I don't want people to think I'm suggesting that they're, the Kansas City Chiefs or the Cincinnati Bengals or the Buffalo Bills, or, we don't want to, I'm not trying to draw any comparisons. I'm just saying that I think there's a chance if the offensive line can come together, and they don't have to be the best offensive line in the league, as long as they can do the job to some degree, there's some talent here on offense.
For sure. But it's all predicated on that offensive line. Tannehill can have whomever out running routes down the field, whomever behind him in the backfield, and Derrick Henry will be able to do some Derrick Henry things on occasion. DeAndre Hopkins will be able to do some DeAndre Hopkins things on occasion, and Ryan Tannehill will make the best of what he's got in front of him, as he has had to do when he's been available the last 2 seasons. And he's been, in part, not available because of what's been in front of him, and because he's been bludgeoned basically on every third drop back, it feels. The offensive line is vastly more important to me than is DeAndre Hopkins, even as, of course, all of these things need to work in concert for this team to have success. But if you're asking me to assign a value to one thing that's greater than the other, I would say you have far more hinging, or good Lord, easy for me to say, far more hinging on the offensive line situation than you do on DeAndre Hopkins. And while that's not as sexy to talk about, and while, videos of Andre Dillard doing pass set drills are not going to get you as excited as watching DeAndre Hopkins go through the ladder and catch a pass, an individual, it is fundamentally the thing that is going to dictate their success or failure this year.
Hearing people talk about this offensive line around the league, like big picture conversations, people national media type of conversations.
Interested in this Titans offensive line.
Not at all. Not at all.
And like the smart people, not just like power rank.
Yeah, not first take, right? Right.
First take debating offensive line rankings, are they?
Like Warren Sharp, who does nothing but look at stats, analytics, ranked. Didn't he rank the I don't want to say it out of turn, but he ranked the Titans, I don't want to say dead last, but it might have been.
I will go and look through his.
He's been doing his positional position group preview rankings.
Yesterday he ranked the Titans,
the front seven,
like 23rd.
Yeah, and the bottom 10.
By the way, I don't necessarily disagree with him.
I would disagree with him on that, but that's a conversation for another day.
Okay,
but it is interesting because they didn't address any singular position group more than they addressed the offensive line this offseason. I don't know how Titans fans feel at this moment with NPF suspension, but pre-NPF suspension, I would say Titans fans were feeling pretty good about the moves made on the offensive line.
Because Dennis Staley wasn't here.
Right.
he might have been one of the most famous left tackles in football last year for all of the wrong reasons.
It is easy to convince yourself. Former first-round pick at left tackle, first-round pick at left guard, and Peter Skoronski. There is some continuity with Brewer at center, a versatile veteran in Brunskill, and then pre-suspension, NPF going into year 2 as a starter at right tackle. Titans fans, to me, felt confident in the offensive line. But around the league, not so much.
No, again, as I mentioned, the people who study this stuff on a granular level, and 3 that come to mind in particular who have cited the Titans' offensive line reconstruction as not being sufficient enough to make a difference. Robert Mays of The Athletic, who for some reason loves offensive line play at a level that most people do not. Brandon Thorne, as I mentioned, and Warren Sharp, all 3 people whose analysis should be trusted as far as these things are concerned. Now, that does not necessarily mean that this group, in its current iteration, can't find more success than they've had in other spots. Dillard, unknown. Skoronski just got here. Brewer, last sample size, not good. Different position, not good. Brunskill, career-wise, thought of as a below-average starting offensive lineman, but a good enough player to continue to get jobs because he can play multiple positions. And then NPF, a former third-round pick, will not be available for the first 6 games of the season. As we know, I don't know what Jamarco Jones is, other than he had to play a couple of different spots in Seattle and dealt with a significant amount of injury last year that he tried to come back from and was ultimately unable to do. So like I said, it doesn't mean that it's that your Titans offensive line reconfiguration, reconstruction, reboot, retool, whatever, that it's all for naught just because they did the most work of any position at that position across the board. They had to. They had to do something different. They couldn't run really any iteration of what they had back, not just because of the contract situation, but because results were clear and obvious, glaring to everybody. This group couldn't play together.
If the offensive line holds up and stays relatively healthy this season, I think this could be a 12-13 win team in 2023.
Whoa! Record predictions. Who are you?
That's not a record prediction.
Sure, 12 or 13 wins is absolutely a record prediction.
That's not me saying this team is going to go 12-5. That's me saying if the offensive line can play above par this season, I think this can be a 12-13 win team.
What are you trying to do? That's a record prediction that you're trying to backpedal out of actually being a record prediction. No, I'm just saying that they're capable of winning 12-13 games. That doesn't mean I'm picking them to win 12 or 13 games.
Play both sides so you always come out on top. There are enough games last season that the Titans were in that had no business being in, with a cobbled together group on the only on the offensive line, but at wide receiver, at quarterback, the entirety of the offense. The Chargers game, 17-14. Tannehill was sacked 4 times in that game. That was the Dylan Radins ACL game. We know what could have happened in Kansas City if literally one of those catches that hit Nick Westbrook-Akine or Chris Conley's hands is hauled in. You're looking at a potentially different outcome. The Bengals game, a 4-point loss at home. The Jacksonville game at the end of the season. There are enough games that the Titans were in that I think the difference would be made up, if healthy, which is always a caveat, along the offensive line and with what DeAndre Hopkins can do to open up the offense for Derrick Henry.
If that was as applicable as I think most people think it is, that kind of carryover, right? Based on last year's results, a similar collection of players that is coming back with, again, you cannot predict health, so at a certain point, as you said, if they are an above-average healthy unit.
It's not so much based on last year's results, but just using that as examples to strengthen what we already know to be a fact that Mike Vrabel keeps this team in games.
Lucas,
right? That Mike Vrabel finds ways to keep his team in games and win games that they have no business winning on paper.
I do understand what you're saying, but you can't say not taking last year's sample size or results as a sample size and then saying, but based on the sample size of last year's results. I do get what you're saying about the competitiveness of the football team. I do understand.
Those are just singular examples of this team. Like, this team was at its worst in the Mike Vrabel era in the back half of last year, correct? Like, the Titans have never looked worse. Their personnel situation, their health situation, their talent situation overall has never been worse than it was in the back half of last season, correct?
Right. And I don't even think that was because of just the offensive line. It's because the quarterback got hurt. The one thing that did the one buffer that kept them from being a god-awful disaster in 2021, as opposed to the number one overall seed, is a quarterback. And the quarterback got hurt enough last year that it cost you meaningful games, cost you games against the Texans at the end of the year, cost you games against the Jaguars in all likelihood at the end of the year, and you can nitpick the officiating and all these different things as you like. I understand. The NFL is filled. You could do that result. I mean, who's a similar sample size? Detroit is probably, now they didn't quite have the slide at the end of the year that the Titans did, but Detroit is another team that people are high on the Lions this year, right? People are picking the damn Bears to win the division for reasons that are beyond me.
Well, we know more about Mike Vrabel than we do about Dan Campbell, right? Like,
yes.
It is very reasonable.
I think we know a lot about Dan Campbell, but you know that you can trust Mike Vrabel more in-game than you can Dan Campbell. There's a larger sample size of Dan Campbell making errors than there is Mike Vrabel.
Pre-DeAndre Hopkins, it would be reasonable. We said this. This team's going to be in games, but what is their ceiling? What is a reasonable ceiling for this team with Traylon Burks, Chikakonkwo, Nick Respikakina as their pass-catching core? Now, with DeAndre Hopkins in the fold and what that can open up, I do believe, with that fact remaining, that this team will be in games. They will have an opportunity to win games, and health always an asterisk, that if the offensive line holds up, this could be a 12-13 type of regular season team.
You have record predictions erupting all over the place in the chat. You see what you've done?
Bring them on.
I've fought this for 3 years, and you're out here 3 years into this. You're going to decide you're going to be record prediction.
It's not a record prediction.
If they do, if all of these things happen, if the perfect scenario exists, yes, of course.
It's important to have a caveat that I can always fall back on, saying, "Well, but no, I said if."
Man, 10-7 wins the division. Well, here's the one place that I'll agree with you. Okay. And then we'll get into some conversation about some wild quarterback money, some wild money just generally that's being thrown around. The thing that I think is working in their favor the most this year is that the division is still arguably the worst in football.
And I don't think it's the worst in football.
Who's the NFC South? The two Souths.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. It is the second worst.
It's 1A and 1B, okay? Just swap AFC for NFC and you have the worst division in football. They are very much mirror images of one another. In fact, all the rookie quarterbacks are all in those two divisions for a reason. But I will say to you that the division being still not a strong point is their best opportunity to capitalize. Now, whether that's 9 wins, whether that's 10 wins, whether that's 12 wins, whatever. My expectation for them is the exact same as it was heading into last season. This team is capable of winning the division. They could have lost 6 straight games, won a game at the end, and won the division, right? Winning the division does not always look like 12-13 games in a 17-game regular season, and that's something to bear in mind. 615-737-1045 is how you jump into the conversation. DHB in the YouTube chat. 12-5 at worst. I'm mad at you. We're going to talk about Justin Herbert's ridiculous contract, speaking of disappointing playoff expectations, and another monster deal in a different kind of football that I just feel like we have to address. So we're going to get it back into Titan stuff, some observations from practice. We'll be back out at St. Thomas Sports Park tomorrow. Do I have to say Ascension St. Thomas every time now?
Yes.
But respectfully, if they would like to sponsor the show, I'm happy to get that right. But it's just...
No, you have to say it.
It's like, okay, so why do I have to do that for Ascension St. Thomas, and why do I not have to call Twitter X?
No, those are the rules. You have to say Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park.
Who makes these rules?
I don't know. But I want you to have to say it.
All right, Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. We'll be back out there tomorrow. Lucas is on vacation. I don't know who's going to be out there babysitting me. Apparently, Kirby has to leave in the middle of it, too.
Vacation's a strong word.
What do you mean?
I mean, I'm off tomorrow, but I'm not going on vacation.
Okay, no, you want to tell people, because now you sound like me bitching about the Vegas Strip.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares that I'm doing this. I'll be in the Blue Ridge Mountains on a bachelor party.
That's vacation.
No, that's not a vacation.
You're not working.
Yeah.
Are you
for
taking
one
PTO?
Day. Yeah, one day.
It's vacation.
I guess.
We don't have to debate this. We will also get to DeAndre Hopkins being an absolutely ruthless, cold-blooded social media murderer because two people were brutally victimized yesterday in ways that are hilarious to me, and we will talk about that in a moment. But meanwhile, two big quarterback contract situations that came to pass that we did not address yesterday for obvious reasons out there at training camp, so no real reason to talk about Justin Herbert and Aaron Rodgers. But today, I have had a little more time to go through the details of Justin Herbert's deal. I don't know. Did you put it in an update or anything like that yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay. So Justin Herbert gets a contract. He beats Joe Burrow to market, right? Those two are the next due. Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, those guys have just gotten paid. Who else would be considered in that next kind of cycle of contracts? Is
Burrow.
No, I know. Beyond Joe, am I missing?
Oh, beyond Joe.
I just wanted to make sure that I'm not missing anybody who's kind of on deck, because I know these. I mean, certainly you want to get ahead of the quarterback market if you can, for exactly the reason the Chargers wanted to pay Herbert before Burrow got paid. But so they give him a 5-year extension, $262.5 million. The deal came a day before the Chargers ultimately opened camp. He's only 25 years old, and it keeps him under contract through the 2029 season. So here are some details that are interesting. He's got a no-trade clause. Deshaun Watson is the only other NFL quarterback I can think of right now with a no-trade, or who had previously a no-trade clause. With the Houston Texans. That was something that he got to dictate. It's why other teams were basically courting him during his suspension / kind of purgatory process that saw him end up with the Browns. I don't know of any other quarterback currently that has a no-trade clause.
Rodgers.
He had one in Green Bay.
He has one at the Jets.
Does he have one with the Jets? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and his contract is one that we'll get to.
And he's restructured. But the amount of money he's giving up, which we'll get to, like, he's not going to move on the no trade clause, right?
Yeah,
if anything,
the money,
if he's going to give up more money, he's going to want to strengthen other aspects of that deal,
which we'll get back to here in just a second. So, $193.7 million in injury guarantees. So, his salary, he'll have the highest NFL salary in history, which is how these quarterback contracts go. An average annual salary of $52.5 million. Lamar is 52. Jalen Hurts is 51. Remember, Ryan Tannehill's average annual salary was like $27 million when they agreed to this contract. So, and I know his cap hit is obviously the highest in the league right now of quarterbacks, but when you complain about, again, there are so many reasons to not complain about that quarterback, and yet people still find ways to scapegoat him in ways that make it. They're starting to bother me how often I feel like I have to cape up for that dude. But anyway, so Herbert's deal is a good deal for both sides. It's not a long-term deal, right? Patrick Mahomes and Zach Martin are two of the players that I think of who got 6- and 10-year deals, who are actually, I think most people look at that as security for the player, when in reality, it's a team-friendly allowance. It does not benefit the player to stay under contract for more years, especially when you're at the top of the market, the way that those two players are. It's why Zach Martin's trying to get more money on his deal currently, because he's seeing the amount of money that's being passed around the offensive lineman that he is substantially better than. Anyway, so Herbert beats Burrow to market. And I think that when you watch these two things, I think the most interesting thing about these two contract situations, Burrow and Herbert, to me, are the fact that these franchises are notoriously not the kind that spend. Now, it does seem like there has been more of an active investment in the Cincinnati Bengals and in the LA Chargers.
I do want to add, you say Herbert beats Burrow to market. I think it's more Chargers beat Bengals to market.
Correct.
Because Burrow is about to be the highest paid player in NFL history.
Correct. And within the context, I mean, when cheap franchises come up, these are the two that are, I think, most cited, right? Maybe you mentioned Washington, but Washington, whatever Dan Snyder was, like, it didn't feel like there was a lack of investment. That man, in fact, they like the Albert Hainsworth contract, like they've given out a bunch of money to a bunch of players and stuff like that in ways that I don't think people fully grasp when talking about bad ownership. There's two different distinguishing qualities between bad ownership and cheap ownership. Maybe you might conflate those things. But how they build around him now in Herbert and how they pay Burrow and continue to try and keep that thing afloat when you know that they are predisposed to not spend and not retain top-of-market free agents when they've got them all over the field now in Cincinnati. I am fascinated to see how much more, for obvious reasons, Joe Burrow's a top 3 to 5 quarterback by anybody's estimation. How much more they lean on Joe Burrow in ways that we're talking about. Kevin Byard is giving back money, and Travis Kelce is not arguing to be the highest paid at his position every time a tight end gets a new contract, right? How they kind of balance these things is going to be, I think, one of the most fascinating dynamics around the future of those two. We're talking about contenders in the AFC and locking their quarterbacks up for the long term, right? It was hard as hell for Patrick Mahomes to win another Super Bowl. And that's the best of the best right now. And the best team with arguably, I don't think it's much of an argument at this point, but the best coaching staff and a lot of really good players around them. There are a lot of different things that can happen to the best of the best that prevent them from breaking through that Super Bowl ceiling. And I think the Bengals and Chargers with these two quarterbacks and how they figure out their contract situations and how they figure out their cap situations around them, probably two of the most interesting case studies in the AFC right now. 615-737-1045 is the number. Can we talk about Kylian Mbappe just real quick? Real quick. You want to tell people the contract offer that the best player by anybody's consensus in the world, in the sport of soccer, was offered for 1 year by the sovereign entity of Saudi Arabia? How much money he was offered?
So Saudi club Al Hilal offered a world record package for Kylian Mbappe, offering a $332 million transfer fee to PSG, the club he currently plays for in Paris.
Which is the biggest transfer fee ever.
By far. And a $776 million salary for just a 1 year deal for Mbappe to go play in Saudi Arabia. So a total package of $1.1 billion for one deal.
For 1 year.
For a guy who would be barely old enough to drink in the U.S. In France, that's a different conversation.
Still.
But, yes, it's funny how we sit here and we talk about running backs toiling away, just desperately wanting to make $12 million a year.
Please, New York Giants, give Saquon more than $11 million.
And over here is Kylian Mbappe, a 24-year-old who has turned down
he wouldn't take the meeting
to make about a bit, because the salary would have been $776 million for 1 year, and then they would allow him to go back to Europe and playing at a high level. But he also would have gotten so many marketing rights.
Oh my God!
Over there, that it would have been over $1 billion without
Easily.
a doubt for 1 year. And he said, "Nah, I want to keep playing Champions League."
God Almighty!
Can you imagine being able to turn down that type of money? Like, how do athletes process these things, man? Like, when Saquon Barkley looks at that, a guy at the top of his game.
You saw Giannis, who kind of looks like Mbappe in the face, took a selfie and said, "Hey, Al Hilal, hit me up.
Call me up, man."
And that's one of the NBA salaries are insane by within the context of American sports, right? I mean,
that's Saudi money, man.
So basically, I think we've just solved the running backs problem.
It's a bottomless pit. Yeah, go
bring the Saudis in.
Oh no!
Bring the Saudis in to fund the running backs. Somebody call Phil Mickelson. Get him on the next CBA negotiations and provide in the next CBA a provision that allows the Saudis to exclusively pay Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, and all the other running backs who are just out here begging for NFL scraps at the top of their game. Some of the most recognizable players in the sport. Please, sir, can I have some more? Okay, here's the Saudis and Qatar. 615-737-1045 is the number. We brought up Dan Snyder earlier, talking about bad ownership and cheap ownership. Dan Snyder being out is not something that I was here to talk about on Friday, and it's also going to lead us into a discussion about the most hated owner now in the NFL and what he might or might not be doing on the internet with his running back situation. I'm Buck Rising. Second hour is coming up next.
It is 11:03. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. Titans training camp underway this week. The team hit the practice field Wednesday with DeAndre Hopkins in the fold for the first time. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill spoke to the media on what Hopkins brings to the wide receiver room that wasn't already there.
I think he has a veteran presence who's played at a high level for a long time. He's guys played a lot of football, been successful, his whole career. Obviously, unbelievable hands, catch radius. I think understanding of how to get himself open versus different coverages, different looks. So it gives that veteran guy who's been there and done that to lead that room.
The structure of DeAndre Hopkins' contract has been made public, a 2-year, $25.5 million deal with nearly $11 million in guaranteed money. The cap hit for 2023 is less than $4 million. Titans announced the dates that they will wear Oilers throwbacks in 2023. They are October 29th against the Atlanta Falcons and December 17th against the Houston Texans. New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers signed a reworked contract on Wednesday, voluntarily reducing his salary by about $35 million over the next 2 seasons. It is now a 2-year, fully guaranteed $75 million contract. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour underway. Lovely to have you here. Thanks for kicking it with us. Whether you're just now jumping on or you've been hanging out for the first hour, we're happy to have you here. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can live stream the show and interact in the comment section of the FNM Bank chat. Phone number, real easy. You know it, 615-737-1045. And that number is going to be critical to you in the noon hour, yes, Lucas, because we have some very exciting things to give away, but not yet. Not yet. Stop calling the number right now. Well, I mean, you can call the number whenever you want. You're just not going to win tickets till the noon hour. What do we have for people in the noon hour today, bud?
Not just Music City Grand Prix tickets, but Turn 9 Club passes for the entire weekend, August 4th through 6th, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're going to be out there. There will be a cast of characters taking in the race weekend in one of the best environments you could possibly ask.
Indeed, and just for reference, that 3-day pass to the Turn 9 Club, it provides you access to the paddock where all the cars are so you can get up close and personal. It is all-inclusive with free food from Edley's Barbecue and Poncho and Lefty's, free beer and wine. So I know that will be as big a reason for people to be interested in the Turn 9 Club as any. And, of course, non-alcoholic beverages also included with your purchase. So we are not just giving away one pass, because we're giving away one pass, yeah? Or 2 passes. How many are we giving away?
Double check.
Okay. These are important details that we need to know. But it is one pass for all 3 days. That's as good a selling point as any. So we'll tell you how you can win those in the noon hour today.
MusicCityGP.com to purchase.
Indeed. For single-day passes, if you don't win the tickets today, we'll have more tickets to give away leading up to the race next weekend. Is that next weekend already?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
It is. We're giving away a pair, by the way, in the noon hour.
So you and a friend, you and a loved one, you and somebody you want to impress, whatever you're trying to do. You can win tickets to 3 days of the Turn 9 Club at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, August 4th through the 6th, courtesy of the fine folks at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix.
And you'll hang out with us.
Yeah, that, again, like you said about your weekend plans, nobody cares about us. We are simply the vessel to provide them with the things that they want, whether it be sports talk about their favorite teams or the free tickets that we have to give away from time to time. Those are the primary interests in people in us. But we'll be there. It'll be fun. So a story, it's literally from a week ago, but I'm dying to talk about it because I was off on last Friday and Lucas and Keith Bullock did well to fill in for me, and I appreciate them doing so. But I don't think you guys got into in great detail what happened with Washington Commanders owner Dan Snyder, who is now out officially. The sale of the Washington football franchise, which I honestly, they're talking about changing the name again. I honestly hope they change it back to the Washington football team. But the NFL franchise in Washington, whatever it ends up being, officially sold at this point. And a record sale for Dan Snyder, who, despite doing everything wrong, being allegedly, I will say, because I don't know him personally, but allegedly, although I don't even think these things are alleged anymore when the findings of the Beth Wilkinson report are now public.
And corroborated and confirmed.
And fined $60 million as a result. So perhaps allegedly can now be removed
we're
from
past
the conversation.
allegedly.
Okay. Rotten human being. Just all around bad guy. Okay? That guy just cashed in for the most a professional sports franchise has ever sold for. So the $60 million fine, he ain't sweating it. He's counting his $6-point-something billion that he made off the sale of his football team on his yacht in the French Riviera. He's chilling. But this individual, now being out of professional football, leaves a gaping hole in the world of professional football. Who do you think the second most hated NFL owner is? I'm willing to make the argument that he, and I'll make it a he, which doesn't narrow it down tremendously. I will make the argument that he is very, very much in the AFC South.
Before you do that, I mean, I think it's important to put into context just how bad of an owner Dan Snyder was.
Well, we can. Sure, we can. So the independent investigation concluded that he sexually harassed a team employee and that the team withheld revenue from the NFL, which, by the way, in league circles is the far greater sin.
Yes.
I'll tell you right now. Attorney Mary Jo White, who led the investigation, informed the league's owners of her findings during a special session. This is according to a report from John Keim, the ESPN Washington Commanders beat writer. Informed the league's owners of her findings during a special session last Thursday, that is. The news of her findings broke at the same time it was announced that the owners had unanimously approved the sale of the Commanders to Josh Harris for $6.05 billion with a B. The fine against Snyder represents 1% of the sale price. So there's all manner of different issues, not just with Snyder himself. The infractions committed by Snyder himself that he was found guilty of are what drew the $60 million fine. Everything else that happened under his watch, under his leadership, are the reasons, going back to Roger Goodell, apparently. That is alleged at this point. Roger Goodell allegedly scheming to release the emails in a way that would cause a chain reaction that not just ran John Gruden out of the league, who famously butted heads with Roger Goodell on a regular basis, but also led, finally, to the smoking out of not just the league's most hated owner, but the NFL's most hated owner. And when I say the NFL, like the league hates that guy the most. Collectively, there's the most hatred from other NFL owners towards Dan Snyder. So who now is the villain? Who was desperately hoping that Danny Snyder would hang on for just a little while longer because they know immediately they've got the skeletons in their closet too, because, all these mother bleepers have something going on in their lives.
Whoever it is, I don't think they can live up to the villain. No. It's such a high bar for villains. Nikki Jabvala, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, a Washington Post reporter, ran some stats, ran some numbers on Dan Snyder. 24 years that he owned the Washington Commander football skins.
Yep.
386 games under Dan Snyder's ownership. Washington's regular season record was 164, 222-2, winning percentage of 42%. 10 coaches in that span of 24 years. That includes interim coaches. 6 playoff berths in 24 years. 4 division titles in 24 years, in what was for a while the worst division in football.
It's a lot more than I thought it'd be, honestly.
As many division titles, 4, as there were federal investigations.
Is that also a statistic that has been been included in Nikki's reporting?
Those federal investigations do not include 2 NFL investigations. That does not include 3 attorney general investigations. 3 team names, 27 starting quarterbacks. And how many All-Pros? In 24 years.
Across the roster?
Yes. In over the course of over 2 decades of Dan Snyder's ownership, the Washington Commander football skins had 2 All-Pros in guard Brandon Scherf and safety/special teamer Jeremy Reeves.
Stop it. Special team / safety. Respectfully to Jeremy Reeves. Well done by them.
I mean, those
Oh, my God.
are Hall of Fame villain numbers. I know I have one close friend in particular who's from the D.C. area, whose entire family is there. And his dad, a diehard Washington fan since he was a little boy, who has not been able to buy season tickets, like consciously has not been able to buy season tickets to support this team in well over a decade, who feels like he can go to games now. Like, there are legions of fans of this franchise that feel like I can support this team again because they're not led by that man.
He killed off arguably 2 generations of an entire fan base. And probably more than that, because that is one of the most famous and previously popular NFL franchises and winningest franchises that existed prior to his tenure. You know what I imagine is the most heartbreaking part for fans of that football team whom still remain, whomst in the phraseology of our friend Josh Pate? He's from the area. He's a fan. Dan Snyder was a fan of that football team. That's like kind of the logic behind, at a period of time where Tennessee Volunteer fans wanted a Tennessee guy to because they wanted somebody who cared as much about the thing that they cared about to oversee the rehabilitation of it. Dan Snyder was that person, and just all-time nightmare across all of professional sports. There is enough information against or on Dan Snyder to Donald Sterling, that man, 4 times over. Like Donald Sterling, notable scumbag. Yeah. Reputed scumbag. Dan Snyder, I maybe 10 times the villain is not quite accurate, but damn near. So who is now the most hated owner in the NFL? 615-737-1045. Who comes to mind when you think of hating NFL ownership? It's going to be a lot harder than you think. One of these individuals, who's certainly going to be a nominee, owns a team here in the AFC South, and he's currently fighting with his running back's agent on the internet. We'll get into what's going on with Jimmy Irsay coming up next. Who's the most hated owner in the NFL? 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to join the conversation. Is that me? Do I hear me? What happened there?
Oh, yeah, the YouTube's up over here. You and Phil Collins working together.
Harmony. I don't know that anybody's ever accused me of harmonizing well. We're going to get into this conversation, obviously, because Jim Irsay and Jonathan Taylor's agent are publicly arguing on the internet. It's hilarious. Do you consider yourself a good singer? Do you do karaoke?
Oh, no. No. I'm a terrible singer. Absolutely awful.
See, and maybe it's just in my head, but I think that I'm good enough to be a bad singer, if that makes any sense. Like, I have full confidence that if we go and do a karaoke thing, we should do this as a show at some point. I think that I will get up there with great confidence, and I will think that I sound good enough to be a bad to below average singer.
What's your go-to?
Oh, it's got to be something. It's typically something that allows me to be within my range, which is typically like Johnny Cash or Josh Turner. Anything low.
I end up at Tom Petty, which probably isn't a great idea.
Yeah. Easy for me to say that. But do you consider Johnny Cash a good singer?
Yes.
It's like Bruce Springsteen, though. Do you consider Bruce Springsteen to be a good singer?
I'm meh on Bruce.
Well, yeah, I'm just talking about, like, how they sound. It is not necessarily about the vocal talent necessarily. It's all of the things, right, that make them who they are. But I don't necessarily. So, like, Tom Petty, I feel like, is a good singer. I feel like to take a crack at Tom Petty is harder than to take a crack at Johnny Cash.
Yes.
If that makes any sense.
That is fair.
Anyway, I don't know if Jim Irsay and Jonathan Taylor's agent will be singing karaoke together anytime soon. But you've seen the messaging from Chris Ballard, the Colts general manager. John Harbaugh was asked about J.K. Dobbins' situation. The running backs are obviously at top of mind. We had Rand Carthon on the radio show yesterday talking about the value of the running back, not just because he's got Derrick Henry, but because it's the position that he played as a collegiate player at Florida and in the NFL for a couple of years. The value of the running back is something that is being debated by everybody, and there's a lot of top-name running backs. They're obviously in interesting contract situations. In fact, I just saw tweets coming out of New York. Saquon Barkley is getting ready to speak to the media, and I'm curious to know what he says about whether or not he kind of felt like he caved on his deal. So Jim Irsay, though, does not seem interested in at all reevaluating the league's approach to handling running backs, despite how many of them are publicly and privately protesting about the way that they are being devalued. So he's out there on Twitter, as he typically is, not singing, not doing, not rehearsing lines from his Netflix special with the head of Colts security in ways that are hilarious, but tweeting about the CBA and the position of running backs. We have negotiated a CBA that took years of effort and hard work and compromise in good faith by both sides. To say now that a specific player category wants another negotiation after the fact is inappropriate. Some agents are selling, quote, bad faith. Now, the agent of his famous running back, Jim Irsay's famous running back, has responded to this on Twitter. And he apparently does not seem interested in what it is that Jim Irsay is selling publicly. His name is Malky Kawa. He is the agent representing Jonathan Taylor. He is responding to the dismissal of the Colts owner by saying, quote, bad faith is not paying your top offensive player. Is anybody disputing that Jonathan Taylor is the top offensive player? Now, that may change. We'll see what happens with Anthony Richardson this year. It could be a totally different story by the end of the 2023 season. Who is the top offensive player for the Colts if not Jonathan Taylor? Who is the top offensive player for the New York Giants if not Saquon Barkley? The quarterback in New York is currently being compensated as such. You understand there is a significant level of importance that is assigned to quarterback that is not to running back, but I think people in New York would debate that. I think people in Tennessee have debated that early and often, ever since Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry's contract situations came up the first time around. Jonathan Taylor is who they were putting the ball or who they were giving the ball to in critical situations over Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan. Now, Jonathan Taylor obviously got hurt last year. That was a frustration for him as he gets ready for his contract year. But you've got a team that's coming off a 4-win season, has a new coaching staff, and is basically saying, from a front office perspective, hey, we don't set the market sets the market, and we respond to the market. The market for running backs is taking a heavy beating. Are you going to argue? Is anybody going to argue that Quentin Nelson is the most important offensive player for the Colts? He's the highest paid. He's the one with the $20 million plus contract. He's the person making almost twice as much as the running backs who are currently getting deals, a la Saquon Barkley.
Saquon, I just did the math, was responsible for 27% of the Giants' offensive output last season.
Outrageous.
Yeah. That's
outrageous.
Total rush and pass yards or receiving yards.
So the best argument that I've heard in favor for the running backs, because I understand what the NFL is doing, and I'm largely in agreement with the league, even as I am sympathetic to the cause of the position. The best argument that I've heard for the running backs came from Nick Chubb. Did you hear what Nick Chubb had to say about this the other day at Browns camp? He said, we're the only position in football that if we produce at a high level, we get basically, it costs us money. 2,000 yards is an incredible accomplishment for a running back. And what immediately is the conversation around the running back?
That's his peak, right?
Yeah, too much tread on the tires.
No running back has ever done that twice, right?
Right.
So that is it. That is the peak of their career, and you're not going to compensate somebody long term if you think that you've already seen their best.
So let's not even make it about 2,000 yards, because you're correct. Derrick Henry is one of only 8 players who's done that in NFL history. Just high volume and production off of that volume. They are going to get knocked for it. The more you carry the ball, despite how much success you have, that's going to be held as a mark against you. What other player or what other position group is penalized for their level of production the way that the running back position is? Now, you can argue that you can find varying levels of production and that you can survive in the NFL with varying levels of production. You don't have to pay top dollar for the best running back in football to be able to put together an efficient running attack. Nobody is disputing this. But Greg Cosell and I were having this discussion yesterday at the tail end of the podcast where we broke down DeAndre Hopkins' fit within the Titans offense. The install is the podcast. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch it every week, every Wednesday on 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel. So, Greg, I asked Greg the question, all right, why is it being made such a binary argument? And this was Greg's response.
Well, unfortunately, the conversations become binary, and it shouldn't be, because it's a very nuanced thing, and it's very team specific, it's very player specific, it's how you structure a team and an offense philosophically. I don't think anybody would argue that running the ball is not important. Okay, at some point you've got to be able to run the ball. Now, that there's an offshoot to that can go in 5 different directions. That doesn't mean you have to build your offense around a running back. That doesn't mean that the running back is unimportant. This subject is very, very nuanced. There's a lot that's involved. And I'm not a cap guy. I don't follow the numbers. Most people, I think, would argue that if you're going to be a great offense with a chance to get to and win a Super Bowl, that the quarterback would probably have to be the driving force of your offense as opposed to a running back. But there are exceptions. Look, we talked about this with your Titans. The Titans in 2019 made it to the AFC Championship game. Derrick Henry was clearly the foundation of the offense. Tannehill did have a really good season that year, as you know, but clearly the offense was driven by Derrick Henry. Can it be done? Of course. Can you draft running backs late and have them be a factor? Sure you can. I think the example in the Super Bowl is a poor one where the Chiefs ran the ball to start the third quarter and people said, oh, it's Pacheco. He was a 7th round pick. But don't forget they have Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is on his way to arguably being one of the best 3 or 4 quarterbacks to ever play the game. So, every situation is different. And it's more nuanced, more detailed. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just a matter of saying running backs don't matter. Running backs do matter, but it's situational and it's team and philosophy specific.
Imagine that there's more nuance to the conversation than is currently being had. You invoked the name of First Take earlier. I can't imagine that deployment and scheme specificity is being brought up too often on First Take. Now, they do have some smart minds on First Take, and I think it's just a nature of what debate culture is. But the conversation around the running back, we often default to the dumbest version of the conversation. And I'm including myself. I don't know why that's the natural kind of direction that people tend to take arguments. It's unfortunate. I think it branches out to more than just sports, which makes us dumber as a society. But the complexity of the running back conversation, the true complexity of the running back conversation is really not being had in the proper way. And it doesn't help that people like Jim Irsay are throwing fuel on the fire. Basically, is he not alienating his best offensive player right now? And that's fine. Like there needs to be some kind of distance, I think, between player and ownership, no matter how friendly you might have or how friendly your work relationship might be with your employer, or if you have a relationship with the owner of your company. Like, Lucas, do you know who owns Cumulus Media, where we currently do a radio show for as a part of the Cumulus Radio Network? No. Okay. So that tells you everything that you need to know about the employee-company-owner relationship. No. I assume it's the person that sends us all those emails we should be paying attention to about something called Forcebook, which I have not. Maybe we should not be talking about this in a public place.
That would be our CEO.
But not the owner of the company. Okay. I should probably read my email more. I'm currently locked out, which has been a blessing, but not necessarily the most productive for my work environment. Anyway, I think that Jim freaking Nance says, yes, you do, Buck. Just thought about that. A lot of times you read the worst comments and not the better ones. Well, I think that might be biased. Maybe I'm not reading Jim freaking Nance's comments enough and he feels like he's making better arguments than I'm reading. But you are correct. It's the same thing that I get on Lucas about. Lucas will get upset, not necessarily upset, but he will be. Is combative a fair word to use for you when you see something that you latch onto in the YouTube chat?
I like to. I like to mix it up.
I like
to mix it up with people in the YouTube chat. It's fun.
Is it fun? Because I see your frustration in print when I'm reading them.
We have a good time. Somebody came at us yesterday for not knowing. For not knowing something and just lambasted us for not knowing what we're talking about. And I replied to him. I said, you're right. We're just here because we won a contest. Glad to be here.
But there are moments when you take those, I think, arguments a little more seriously. Typically, and I think that's a human problem, right? We default to the thing that pisses us off the most. And usually the thing that's dumbest pisses us off the most because we immediately say in our heads, well, of course you're wrong because I'm right and I know more than you do. And, thus debate culture flourishes. But I think Chad Casual says the guy who was mad at you didn't know the third string right tackle.
That's right.
Was mad at us because we didn't know the third string right tackle?
We were not familiar with John Ojukwu.
Oh, yeah. No, I listen, I'm very, very honest about my frustration with having to learn a bunch of dudes' names who are going to get cut in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So, yes, I am typically reticent to memorize every last detail about all of the players who are on the 90-man roster because I know they're going to change even throughout the course of training camp.
I think a lot of people are discovering the name John Ojukwu this week.
Yeah. You're not mad at them, are you? Anyway, the running back conversation has become dumber. Jim Irsay is not helping it. I want to say passive-aggressively attacking not only his player, but the representation of the player. When Jim Irsay really doesn't have to deal with the representation of the player, when all he's doing is making Chris Ballard's life harder. When Chris Ballard, honestly, it's a wonder that man has kept his job as long as he has when people like John Robinson are getting fired. But damn, if this running back conversation has not devolved to the lowest form of the argument, which is people screaming, running backs don't matter. And then the opposite argument, from the running backs being like, yes, we do. And that's basically a ping pong match that's gone back and forth the last week or so that hasn't really accounted for, all right, which running back, what offense, how much of it is paying for pass production versus what we're going to get out of you on the back end, how much of it is scheme specific. Are we accounting for the fact that said running back might have had a coaching change that might impact their financial feasibility in the future?
Like Christian McCaffrey's on a $64 million deal.
And nobody's complaining about Christian McCaffrey's number.
No.
Same for I bet Niners fans are complaining about Christian McCaffrey's number.
Nope.
Titans fans love Derrick Henry. Titans fans want to extend Derrick Henry. It is specific to the individual running back, and instead it's all being lumped in and devolved to the dumbest form of the argument.
So is Irsay taking up that mantle of the most hated owner? I don't think he is. I think people want Jim Irsay to stay in the league. He's too much fun.
He is fun.
Too entertaining.
Well, I mean, that's the argument, though, for Jerry. Like, Jerry is probably up there, right? People hate Jerry Jones. But also,
people hate the Cowboys.
People do hate the Cowboys.
Stan Kroenke's the most hated man in Missouri, I imagine.
Now, I will say, Kroenke's not vocal the way that Jerry and Irsay are.
No. I'm just strictly talking about leaving St. Louis.
But I will say to you that of all the owners that would probably connote hatred, Kroenke's the least likely for you to find a redeeming quality about, right?
And he wins the most.
Yeah.
So that automatically.
Oh, and not just wins in the NFL.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. Everywhere. Yeah. Everything he has a hand in. Haslam, a sleeper in this.
Oh, no. That's it.
Jimmy Haslam?
That's the answer. Yeah. No, ding, ding, ding. Do we have an award-winning sound? Do we have anything? Yes, that's the answer. That is correct.
Because he has impacted pocketbooks, right, around the league with the contract he gave Deshaun Watson.
Yes. And again, it's not just that he gave Deshaun Watson the contract, it's that he gave the person who had sexually predatory behavior in his background the most guaranteed money in NFL history, and justified it in a press conference by saying, now listen, you got to understand, this is a really good young quarterback that we've got.
That's why people hate Jimmy Haslam. It's not why owners hate Jimmy Haslam. Similar to Dan Snyder. Snyder's transgressions operating one of the most sexually toxic environments in the National Football League is not exactly why NFL owners did not like Dan Snyder.
Correct. So instead of operating one of the most sexually toxic environments, not just sexually toxic, but all kinds of toxicities, one of the most sexually toxic environments in football, we instead pivot to now Jimmy Haslam, who gave one of the most sexually toxic players in the history of the sport the most guaranteed money in NFL history.
Which is not the reason why owners are unhappy with Jimmy Haslam.
Congratulations to you, Jimmy Haslam, for becoming, without dispute, without question, the single most hated NFL owner in the absence of dear Danny Snyder.
And welcome Magic Johnson to the NFL, who is a part of the group led by Josh Harris, now owning the Washington Commanders.
Did you see the quotes from him? He was asked, are you going to be a fan of the team? He's like, probably not.
Just an investment.
Have you watched them before? No, not really. It's just like his tweets. It's just like just kind of
They might change their name again.
No, I know. I'm actively advocating for them to return to the Washington football team.
100%.
It's so much better. The Commanders. No, thank you. I love that people in Washington don't call them the Commanders. They call them the Commies. The Washington Commies. 615-737-1045. Your new wide receiver is a social media assassin. I'm going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins absolutely scalping people on the internet yesterday. Coming up next. All right, so all of you are excited about what DeAndre Hopkins is going to do for your football team, how many souls of corners he's going to steal throughout the course of the 2023 season. If his social media behavior is any indication of the competitive fire, shall we call it, that he is going to bring to the football field, I cannot wait.
Like a J.J. McCarthy type of fire?
Oh, my God. What is Jim Harbaugh doing? What is he doing? I read you this quote. I just saw Dennis Dodd of CBS tweeting. I guess he's at a Jim Harbaugh press conference.
Yeah, he's not doing his quarterback any favors.
Jim Harbaugh, literally from Dennis Dodd, CBS 4 minutes ago. Jim Harbaugh compares J.J. McCarthy to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen because he is, quote, willing to do anything for their team. Jim,
Man.
What are you doing?
And he will. I like this quote. Austin Meek, who covers Michigan for The Athletic, on the NCAA investigation that seems to have Harbaugh suspended for the first 4 games.
Seems to.
He said, as you probably already know, I'm not allowed to talk about any aspect of that ongoing situation. I'd love to lay it all out here. Nothing to be ashamed of, but now is not that time. No shame over here.
But let me talk to my lawyer. Anyway, so no, I don't know that DeAndre Hopkins' competitive fire is going to be that of J.J. McCarthy this year at Michigan. But I do know that he loves to just absolutely end people on social media in ways that sometimes make you kind of, oh, my God. Man has a family, literally. So this yesterday, what was first? What he did to, it's not Sean Salisbury. Who's the name of the Houston radio host?
Sean Pendergrass.
Pendergrass.
Now, Salisbury, with that said, will be on Blaine and Mickey today at 2:20.
Oh, I hope that they ask him about this.
Of course. Well, yeah. Of course.
Well, I don't know. Blaine and Mickey is a more professional radio show, and I can't imagine that this is the first thing that comes to mind when you're going to interview the former Houston Texans quarterback.
Houston Oilers quarterback.
Houston Oilers quarterback.
He and Blaine were Oilers teammates together.
That's right.
So that's at 2:20.
So again, they have more important things to talk about than the teammate of Sean Salisbury or the co-worker of Sean Salisbury getting absolutely nuked, literally nuked on Twitter. So the video is taken from Jim Wyatt. All right, and Jim Wyatt's got video of DeAndre Hopkins at practice. Now, you'll remember, if you listen to DeAndre Hopkins' opening press conference on this radio show, that DeAndre Hopkins was asked about his practice habits. He said they had been overblown. He said he thinks that was something that started in Houston, and then he went on to say in fact, do we have the audio? It's probably better to hear the joke from DeAndre Hopkins' mouth instead of mine.
Of course, that's overblown. I think that started in Houston. When they were trying to, whatever. But of course, yeah.
When they were trying to badmouth you in the public sphere so that they could trade you for less or trade you for more. So Sean Pendergast, who's a Houston radio host, quote tweets this and says, quote tweets the video of him at practice yesterday. Says, rare footage of DeAndre Hopkins practicing. Okay. Layup joke. Sure, it does well in Houston. Sure, there are some Houston Texans fans who are bitter and that will play well, right?
Again, bad week for Houston fans.
It is a bad week bad week, and it just got worse for Sean Pendergast. DeAndre Hopkins quote tweets this and says, just buy my jersey for your wife at this point. I'm sure she's tired of hearing my name in your sleep.
Oof.
Somebody has since photoshopped a Houston Oilers Hopkins jersey onto a photograph of Sean Pendergast and his wife. All right, so this now has become actually about an attack on this man's family. Then, this isn't even the worst thing or the most brutal of assaults that was committed by DeAndre Hopkins against somebody on the internet yesterday. Did you see what he did to Lawan? So Lawan, there's a video, again, revolving around DeAndre Hopkins practicing yesterday. It's a video posted by the Titans' social media accounts. It is DeAndre Hopkins trotting out walking out onto the practice field from the facility. He looks great. He's in his Titans two-tone blue. All the vibes are high. And there's Lawan in the comment section of Instagram saying in like narrator quotations, gets yelled at for walking. Because Mike Vrabel, famously, remember when Tom Brady was here for joint practices? Tom Brady walking out on the field. Who's the first person barking at him from across the field? It's his former teammate, Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel and Tom Brady screaming at each other from across the practice fields, in good fun about Tom Brady walking on the practice field. So that's the kind of approach that Lewan is taking, not attacking DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins apparently took this as an attack and responds to Taylor Lewan's comments in his narrator voice. Gets yelled at when Chandler Jones, tags Chandler Jones, gets yelled at when Chandler Jones has 5 sacks on you in one game. Oh, my God. Lewan is out there feeding his goats at his home, not in an NFL training camp, just minding his own business. Assault. I love that DeAndre Hopkins, 1, is this vicious on social media, and I love that 2, unlike A.J. Brown, he doesn't delete his tweets. Do you ever see that clip from Hard Knocks with the Texans with him on it? And I can't remember the name of the defensive back, who it was joint practices against the Washington, at the time, the Washington racial slurs. And the defensive back is chirping at DeAndre Hopkins after a play that the defensive back is not participating in. DeAndre Hopkins is in this man's face saying, I fear God, son. I don't fear, basically implying that he fears no one else but a higher power. getting in his face. So it's D'Angelo Hall. It's D'Angelo Hall who's going, at the end of his career, D'Angelo Hall, he's going against D'Angelo Hall, who at that point in his career is a Washington racial slur, and DeAndre Hopkins is early in his tenure with the Texans. And so on the very next scene in Hard Knocks, it's Hopkins against Hall. And Hopkins runs a route that literally, I don't want to say literally breaks this man's ankles, but literally brings D'Angelo Hall to his knees. Defeats this man in battle without laying a hand on him. It is the most violent repercussions that could possibly be had without swinging on a human being. Chad Casual says, blew out his Achilles. Yes, assault. 615-737-1045. We're going to talk about Malik Willis's improvement coming up next. Saquon Barkley has also spoken on the running back situation and the contract offer that he ultimately accepted from the Giants. We'll tell you how that factors into any future Derrick Henry considerations and touch on Malik Willis's improvement, as I mentioned, coming up next.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. The structure of DeAndre Hopkins' contract with the Titans has been made public. A 2-year, $25.5 million deal with nearly $11 million in guaranteed money. The cap hit for 2023 is less than $4 million. Titans announced the dates that they will wear the Oilers throwbacks in 2023. They are October 29th against the Atlanta Falcons and December 17th against the Houston Texans. Both of those games, noon kickoffs at Nissan Stadium. Titans training camp underway this week. The team hit the practice field Wednesday, beginning the process of figuring out the right tackle spot for the first 6 games of the season, while Nicholas Petit-Frere is suspended. Mike Vrabel spoke on one player that could work his way into that battle. He is undrafted rookie John Ojukwu, otherwise known as OJ.
Has come in, he's learned, he's a smart player, he's got good length, and so he shows up, and by being out there every day, we tell him that they can do 3 things. They can improve, they can take advantage of an opportunity if it's there, and then they can be evaluated. So that's where he's at, just getting started.
For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once, and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What's happening? 2 down, 1 more to go here on 104.5 The Zone. We're happy to have you. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. Thanks for hanging out with us if you've been for the last 2 hours. One more before we turn you over to Blaine and Mickey. We have a lot of Titan stuff to talk about coming out of training camp yesterday. Malik Willis's improvement is something that I'd like to touch on, and we sat down with General Manager Rand Carthon yesterday on the radio show. That interview is available to you in its entirety, as is our conversation with new corner Sean Murphy-Bunting, both via podcast, or I think Jackson posted both of those interviews in their entirety to the YouTube channel, if you want to go watch those from training camp yesterday. So we'll get to that momentarily. Did you see, though, we've already had a star player get carted off the field at training camp?
Yeah, in Miami, right?
Jalen Ramsey, the stud corner who was traded for by the Dolphins from the Rams this year. Dolphins trying to put together, as competitive as a roster as humanly possible in a really, really crowded AFC East. On a pass thrown to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey was in defense, apparently, according to our friend Cameron Wolf of the NFL Network. Grabbed his left knee after defending Tyreek Hill on a pass play. Trainers evaluated him for a bit on the sideline. Then he hobbled onto the cart. So that's a very, very unfortunate loss. Well, the extent of which we don't know, obviously, but anytime a player is carted off the field, obviously that does connote a certain level of concern as to the future viability of that player for a season. But we'll see. We'll hope for the best for Smyrna native Jalen Ramsey at this point. That's a really, really unfortunate thing. I was looking forward to, he's one of the players that I'm most looking forward to seeing when the Titans play on Monday Night Football in Miami. I think that's going to be a fun game. I think that when you talk about offense versus defense, there are a few better matchups that I think on the schedule entice me more than Dolphins offense versus Titans defense. Did you see, we did bring it up earlier, that Warren Sharp ranked the Titans as the 23rd best defensive front seven in football this year, citing their pass rush win rate, good against the run, poor against the pass, and notably because of Jeff Simmons' production drop-off and Danico Autry's absence for a period of time, and Harold Landry being lost for the season, and Bud Dupree being unreliable, and Rashad Weaver being a fine role player, but at this point in his career looks to be just that, just a role player.
I'm confused on these Warren Sharp rankings. Is he ranking from 2022 or 2023? Because it feels like all the evidence he's using is from 2022.
Okay, well, what? Now, I think that they will ultimately, whatever measure you want to use for this, I think they're probably a better unit just because they always play above their heads in this scheme, regardless of who the talent is.
The coaching staff has earned the benefit of the doubt when we talk about this defensive line unit.
Agreed. But I'm not, people are sold on the Titans defense as being the thing that's going to carry them or give them the best chance to succeed this year. And I'm certainly not, as I mentioned, the scheme that they play in, the coaching staff that they play for, has consistently allowed them to operate above a level of talent that they have any business operating under. And also, they do have some good players. Kevin Byard is a top 3 player at his position. Jeff Simmons is a we'll call him top 3 player at his position. I'd probably put Aaron Donald and Quinnen Williams above him in terms of just him. But what also Jeff allows his teammates to create around him is as important as any player in the league. Autry is something I have a question mark about. Again, durability is my question. Landry, what percent of Harold Landry do they have to work with this year? He looked great at practice yesterday. We didn't talk really about Harold in the way that he was very, very active. I didn't see him miss a team drill. I saw Weaver come in relief for him at some points with the starting offense, but I don't think that was by nature of Harold Landry needing relief. Or necessarily, I don't think it was injury related. I think that was just, okay, give Harold a couple of minutes to catch his breath, and then, Weaver gets some snaps there. Losing David Long, durability, again, the issue with David Long, they worked with a lot of different inside linebackers last year. I have to think that Alshire, again, I don't know what their durability is going to be like. I'm not as sold on the Titans defense as people seem to be. Again, they could be a completely competent unit. I think they could be an above average unit. I think certainly ceiling is above average. But I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that I would consider them a top 10 defense, right? Like 23 is low.
And this, we're talking about the front 7 in this ranking.
But I also do mean defensively, like from safeties to defensive line, that to me is not a top 10 defense. They have all kinds of questions at corner. Their defensive line, they've got thin position groups all over the roster, and you could say the same about many teams, but like what they have behind Jeff and Autry right now, and I guess Tart, Jaden Peavy does not inspire a ton of confidence, and they can make a play here or there, but they're super thin at the defensive line. Arden Key, first-time, full-time starter. Okay, we'll see. Great energy, great effort at practice right now, but I've seen him be productive in a third down pass rush role, but it's my understanding that that's going to be the primary guy opposite Harold. So, to assume just because Jeff's under contract and KB's still here and vibes are high now on defense, they're going to be a good, I would probably say above average defense, but a
lot hinges on Arden Key.
A lot hinges on that pass rush.
For the first time being a full-time starter on the edge. But I feel like there are enough pieces on the front, especially on the defensive line, like what they have in Simmons, Autry, and Tart when healthy. And behind them, there's guys that still, Jaleel Johnson's a guy with NFL experience. Tyler Shelvin, I think, who was it that Vrabel lauded a little bit yesterday when he was asked about offseason award winners? Was it Jaden Peavy?
Yeah, Peavy
the
was
defensive
one.
lineman that Vrabel talked about.
Now, again, do you remember last year's offseason award winners?
Farley
and Radens.
Yes.
And there were some others. But
yes.
Also,
sure. Grain of salt.
Always grain of salt it with, because is it Thomas Odukoya, the Dutch? I think he's Dutch tight end. Who's one of the international players. Mike Vrabel was very complimentary of the work. It doesn't necessarily mean that Thomas Odukoya is somebody you're going to look to have an impact.
He's going to be a factor. But I feel like there are certain units in certain regimes, whether in college or in the NFL, that you just think, they're going to be fine on that end. You know what I mean? Like it's like at Alabama, you often think that about the offensive line, just as an example.
Mm-hmm.
At Ohio State,
I have no doubt that they're going to figure out a way to play good defense in Tennessee.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, if you are presenting to me 32 NFL defenses and show me the Titans and argue with me that they should be a top 10 defense, I'm going to look at you and say they have the ability to play above their skis at any given point. They have proven that time in and time out. I trust them to be able to do so. But if you're going to argue to me that based on this collection of players that this is a top 10 defense, I'm going to look at you and be like, I would just, temper your expectations a little bit.
Sure, but we're talking about the front here, right?
Yes.
The front seven is what Warren Sharp listed as a bottom 10 unit in the league. I feel like you also have been very doubtful about this front.
The depth.
Sure.
I'm very scared because, you saw what happened when Jeff went down. It's not anywhere close. And Harold matters. Of course, Harold matters.
When your best players get hurt, it's going to drop off.
It's not great. But, okay, who's the best front seven in football right now? It's an easy answer.
The best front seven in football?
Easy answer.
Is it the Niners?
No. Well, you could probably go 1B, but I think it's Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Washington is nasty.
Best defensive line, without a doubt.
So I would be, Fred Warner getting paid in San Francisco. Fred Warner is probably the best inside linebacker in football right now. I think that San Francisco has not quite as good defensive line talent as does Washington, but Fred Warner does make up for a lot. Not just what you can do as an inside linebacker typically, but that dude in coverage, he can run with CD Lamb, and that's wild. Wild. So I would say you could flip-flop them depending on your preference, but Washington and San Francisco 1 and 2. And there's not a collection of players elsewhere that rivals those two. Philadelphia did lead the league in sacks last year. Philadelphia, I think, they've done well to replenish their depth. They've got both Nolan Smith and the defensive tackle who had all the problems this offseason.
In Philly?
Georgia defensive tackle.
Oh, Jalen Carter.
Jalen Carter. They got Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. They have all manner of top-line talent, and they have depth. I'm going to put Philadelphia probably somewhere in my top 5. But I think that to argue the Titans at this point is a top, certainly they're top 20. I think Warren Sharp's a bit lower on them than they deserve to be, given that at this point this is a healthy group, a healthy team.
It's
good. There are going to be moments though where Autry misses time, or Jeff misses some time.
I get why Warren Sharp needs more than Mike Vrabel and Terrell Williams' history on getting production out of depth pieces on the defensive line to rank them higher than 23. I get that, but I also get why Titans fans would not exactly be that would not be a big point of concern going into the season.
Sure, I understand if what I'm saying to you bothers you. Because I'm skeptical. Again, you are entitled to have as strong of an opinion as you want about your football team. That is entirely your right. I'm just telling you how I'm looking at it. And how I'm looking at it is they need that offense a hell of a lot more to be the thing that they lean on. And the defense, I think, has a lot more questions than people seem to want to talk about or seem to want to acknowledge. Both of those things can be so. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll get to your phone calls on this. We'll talk about Malik Willis's improvement so far. You'll hear from General Manager Rand Carthon, who was on the radio show yesterday, and which player needs to have the best training camp this year. If you make the case, we will give you a pair of Turn 9 Music City, Big Machine Music City Grand Prix Turn 9 passes. We'll get into all of that coming up next. Welcome back to the show, 615-737-1045. You're going to need that number here in just a second. We're going to get into some improvements that Malik Willis has made, and you'll hear from the general manager of the Tennessee Titans on that fact in just a second. There's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to try and keep track of for training camp tomorrow. We're going to do a cornerback positional preview, and I just got word that Tajay Spears is going to join us tomorrow as a part of the Titans training camp interview series. So we'll look forward to sitting down with the rookie running back. Talked to Sean Murphy-Bunting yesterday, Tajay Spears tomorrow. We hope to have several different players associated with your local professional football team throughout the course of our training camp, on-site training camp coverage. Looking forward to being back out there tomorrow. But cornerbacks is the position group that we're going to preview tomorrow, and then also speak to one of the running backs. Steven in Goodlettsville. We were talking about Warren Sharp ranking the Titans front seven, 23rd out of 32, and how I said I didn't agree with that low of a ranking, but that I said that I certainly had some questions about the Titans defense this year. Steven is in Goodlettsville up next. Hey, Steven.
Hey, I just wanted to help you on why Titans fans might be a little more confident than your ranking or your thought on the defensive line and Warren Sharp's ranking.
Okay.
They finished tied for 13th in scoring defense with one of the worst offensive performances of the season, right? They ran the second fewest offensive snaps and to finish 13th in scoring defense without Harold Landry, without Bud Dupree in the lineup half the time. I just feel like there's a lot more optimism to be there, and optimism may not be a right word because it's not factual, but I mean the defensive
No.
line
I get what you're saying with optimism. It's the same reason we were citing the coaching staff, right? Like they definitely play above their heads more often than they should. Yeah, Steven?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
I just think that they're much better than given as far as looking at as a whole, and especially dealing with that.
Lucas is on the phone. Lucas is on the phone, fading people down mid-call.
A lot of plates, spinning plates.
Figure it out back there. Thank you for the call, Steven. What, no music? You're just tired of people now? You say, oh, dumb point, fade down.
I thought he was done. We got an important thing to give away anyway. Sorry, Steven.
Okay.
We appreciate the call.
No, okay. Thank you for completely dismissing Steven's point. Thank you for the call, Steven. Yes, we do have things to give away here. Why don't you tell people what we have to give away here, and then I'll make the case for Malik Willis as the player that I might select for this particular discussion we're going to have.
So 104.5 The Zone has teamed up with the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix. This show has teamed up with the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix to give our listeners a chance to join us, Buck and myself, Robert Walsh, I believe, will be out there, a cast of characters at Turn 9 Club. 3-day ticket that includes an IndyCar paddock pass, an all-inclusive food and beverage by Edley's Barbecue and Poncho and Lefty's Cantina, private open seating grandstand with chairback seats that has a great view, by the way, of them coming down from the bridge, AC tent behind the grandstand with high tops, LED video boards showing all the action, private bathrooms, closed-circuit race coverage, and concert access. If you can tell us which Titans player needs to have the best training camp and make the best case, the winner gets a pair of Turn 9 Club tickets August 3rd through 4th through 6th, excuse me.
Yeah.
All 3 days. You can go Friday, Saturday, and Sunday next weekend and hang out with us at Turn 9 Club.
And more importantly, take part in all of the cool things Lucas just described.
615-737-1045.
That is correct. So I did not know the value of the Turn 9 Club ticket because we have media credentials, so we're just, we get to roam around, basically, by nature of the credentials. This is it's $849, the Turn 9 ticket in and of itself. Now, that's for all 3 days, but we are giving you the opportunity to win said Turn 9, a pair of these, over $1,600 worth of ticket value. Just if you can make the case for which player needs to have the best training camp for the Titans this year. Now, I know training camp does not necessarily connote success in the regular season, but I do think that it matters for players who are trying to solidify roster spots, to give themselves an opportunity to contribute during the regular season. So I'm going to make the case for mine. Lucas is going to put a bunch of people on hold. Obviously, the lines are going to load up very, very quickly, so we'll get to as many as humanly possible before the end of the show today. But the player that I'm going to make the case for is, I think, a fairly obvious one. Malik Willis is somebody who needs to have an exceptional training camp. Not just a good, not just an improved training camp. He needs to have an exceptional training camp. The book on Malik Willis as a quarterback in the NFL is not yet written. And the sample size that we have of him thus far, underwhelming as a starting quarterback. But you get the idea that there can be substantial room for improvement just because the sample size that you saw last year was objectively bad. Objectively, this is a player who got benched for Josh Dobbs on, 9 or 10 days notice ahead of the Thursday night football game. Training camp, preseason, this is as important a time as Malik Willis will have. And listen, there's a chance that he may make the active roster one way or another, or he may get released and clear waivers and end up on the practice squad. I'm fairly certain that if I had to guarantee 2 roster spots at the quarterback position, that I would still, despite him not having earned the job yet of backup quarterback, I would still probably give Levis the edge over Willis for obvious reasons. New GM, new quarterback drafted by the new GM, somebody who's thought of as having a higher pro pedigree than Malik Willis is, and Malik Willis having already underwhelmed in the sample size that he had to compete for a job. Malik Willis desperately needs to show those kind of improvements at this stage of the game, and that was something that Mike Vrabel mentioned glaring improvements in his opening training camp press conference on Tuesday. That was something that the head coach pointed out when asked about the second-year quarterback.
Well, I think when you coach players and they ask for feedback, and again, I really, you can learn a lot from great coaches, and for me to not think that Nick Saban is one of the best coaches that ever wore a whistle is ridiculous. And so he says something all the time that really average players want to be left alone, and good players want to be coached, and great players want to be told the truth. And I think it's like, man, if we can just live in that world where everybody just, hey, what was this? What is this? What else do I need? What do I need to do to improve? Where do I stand? And they can seek the truth. They can handle the truth. And then, we always want to tell the truth. And so that's what we did the entire offseason. We'll continue to do that. And Malik took those things, and just his appearance, his attitude, smiling, and just playing football. So, and again, playing quarterback in this league as a young player is something very different. And so I think that experience at offseason has helped him, and then we'll continue to work with him and improve.
So that's from the head coach's mouth yesterday at the press conference. And listen, he can do all the things right this offseason. He can have made those improvements. He can have the right attitude. He can be hugely competitive and work as hard as humanly possible. And that may not matter at the end of the day. But all he can do is what's being asked of him, and then go find ways to go above and beyond. And, based on the sample size and what you hear beyond press conferences, Malik Willis is doing exactly that. So a couple of comments here in the F&M Bank chat before we get to the phone calls for your opportunity to win 3-day turn 9 passes. Suge Knight of Nashville says, LOL, Malik is not that bad. He just had to play before he was ready. Another comment from Kurt Crank OG on YouTube. You can't grade Malik at all on last year. He had no offense around him, a scheme that wasn't built for him, and at any time he used his legs, he was taken out. Well, that's not entirely true, but I understand kind of what your point is. Here's the deal. He was that bad last year. That's the only sample size that we have to grade him on. I understand what you're saying. New coordinator, more time. He wasn't ready when they put him in there. That was evident to everybody. But yes, we can evaluate him on the actual live game reps that he got, because that's the only true sample size that's the most important evaluation.
Yeah, I mean
that's the biggest reason why we all have these questions around that guy, because he got out there, God love him, he wasn't ready, and it showed. It showed. You cannot sit there and say you can't grade Malik Willis at all on last year when literally the only opportunity that we have to truly evaluate how these players respond in games is that of an in-game sample size. You got 8 opportunities to see that guy in a live game. You got 3 opportunities to see him start a game. Don't tell me that it's not enough sample size for me to make an objective evaluation about what Malik Willis was in his rookie year.
Both can be true. Like, it was unfortunate for Malik that he had to get thrown out there last year with an offense that completely hamstrings the quarterback, with that offensive line situation, with the inability to separate at receiver, and the fact that we went into his rookie year saying he is nowhere near ready. He's not going to be anywhere near ready in year one. And then when he went out there, we can't act surprised that he's not ready in year one, but he was out there. And that's all we had. So it is just unfortunate for Malik that it got to that point last season.
Agreed. Let's take some submissions here. Make the best case for a player who needs to have the best performance in training camp, and we will give you some turn 9 passes. How about that? Patrick in Springfield is next.
How's it going?
Great.
I'm going to say Traylon Burks. I know it's probably an unpopular opinion, but you look at everything he did last year. I know he got hurt. I know he got hot and humid during practice. I mean, you're in Tennessee. It's, 95 degrees right now? You got to be ready to go. Use D-Hop as an advantage. Soak in as much information as you can get from him. You play together like that. I mean,
Hey, Patrick, your phone line is terrible, but I did hear Traylon Burks, and I understood most of your explanation, but I think it'd be difficult for the radio audience to understand, so we appreciate the call. Traylon Burks is a great submission. You need to carry stuff over from the spring. He had a great spring. He's in shape. You can tell the difference. Do you see how much damn bigger he looks standing behind DeAndre Hopkins? DeAndre Hopkins a full-size wide receiver. Traylon Burks a unit.
Yeah, and the issues in conditioning and the heat and all those things, that was in the minicamp OTA portion of the offseason his rookie year, right?
Yes.
And he was able to go through that portion of the offseason with flying colors in his second year. So he's off to the right start.
I still have people arguing with me about Malik in the chat. Danny Barnhill. It was unfair, Buck. Period. Third string line at best. Life's unfair. You either take advantage of the opportunities that you have, you succeed, or you fail.
You accuse me of getting too sucked into arguing with the chat.
Well, yeah, but that's because I'm right. KJ and Christiana is next. Hey, KJ.
Hey, guys. I'm going to ask one question before I make my pick. Is Harold Landry back in the training camp?
Yep.
He is?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I was going to make a case for Aziz Salar if Harold Landry wasn't back, but I'm going to say Harold Landry. That's the biggest thing for me is him getting back and getting himself healthy again and back in there with that lineup with the defense. Because you were saying earlier how you felt like, you felt like the defense has got a lot more bigger problems than people want to bring up. So I'm going to say Harold Landry, and if he gets injured before that, I'm going to say Aziz Salar because he came from the 49ers. He was big with Fred Warner, was a big leader there. So I think with them picking him up, they brought him in, they expect him to lead. So. Thanks,
KJ. Well, we'll go with your first submission of Landry.
Landry's a good one.
Harold, man, he was out there and active yesterday. I have precious, other than, okay, what percentage? It's really a 2-year recovery for the ACLs, and I think most people are, even as you understand the routine, in reality, it's difficult to get back to true form in the first year after. This is a unique situation. It's almost a full calendar year that he's had. But yes, Harold coming through training camp with flying colors and starting off on a great note yesterday, I think is something that Titans fans who are able to attend training camp practice are going to be very, very much focused on. Jeff in Lebanon is next. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Jeff. Okay, no Jeff.
All right. No Turn 9 Club tickets for you.
Sorry, we have a lot of calls. It's a great prize, so we have a lot of calls, and we want to make sure we get to as many people as possible. How about Jonah in Nashville? See if Jonah's ready to go.
Yeah, guys. So I'm gonna thanks for taking my call. By the way, I'm gonna go with Tannehill, man. I'm gonna say that with all the questions around the quarterback position, all the hype that Levis is calling, I'm gonna say that Tannehill's got to have a big training camp, come out, prove to the guys that he is the leader. He is gonna manage this offense on the field, and I think he's gonna have a good year this year. I know people doubt him every year. I've been one of those people at points, but no, I think he's gonna have a good year. We're gonna come out and we're gonna at least win the division this year.
Thanks for the call. So his logic was all the questions around the quarterback position and hype around Will Levis, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily agree that Tannehill needs to have Like Tannehill doesn't need to separate himself as the leader of that quarterback room. That's already the case.
Nor does he need to establish himself as the leader of the offense. So I would say, Jonah, that's the weakest of the submissions that we've had. And it's, I understand, again, your thought process is your thought process. I would just say that in context doesn't necessarily hold up. Let's try Chris, who's in Spring Hill. Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys. My pick would be Tajay Spears. With Tajay Spears, is that correct?
Yeah. No, I just said ooh, not who.
Yeah. oh. Sorry. I was like, hey, you know who Tajay is, right? Okay. The reason I'm saying with Hopkins in, points were a problem scoring last year. You get a veteran quarterback who understands his check downs. Hopkins is going to spread the field for you. If he has a good training camp and proves that he has the explosiveness that we've seen in college, that I think he's going to make Henry a back by spelling, create the offense that the Titans need for next year.
He is fascinating, isn't he? He's on the radio show tomorrow. Should I tell him that Chris in Spring Hill has nominated him for the player who needs to have the best training camp this year?
Sure.
See how that goes. I mean, theoretically, you could pitch him to me as Derrick Henry's replacement, and I might be comfortable. Well, here's why I might be comfortable with that. I think it's a good submission because I don't think that dude was drafted for spot duty or 5 to 6 touches a game. I think that guy's going to play. So Spears, to me, it doesn't necessarily have to be bell cow, right? Most NFL running games don't do that anymore. Derrick is an anomaly that way. If he can prove that, if he is in fact a 3-down running back and as versatile in the passing game as he's thus far showcased in early spring practices and in one training camp practice that we've seen, I think he's a very, very interesting case to monitor.
It's a big opportunity to take this offense to a level it hadn't really seen, right? The most success the Titans have had in a complementary back has been Dontrell Hilliard.
Yeah, and that was more because, oh, my God, we don't have anybody who's competent catching the football. You're our best receiver. Go.
So it's a big opportunity, not just for Spears, but for the Titans as an offense to find something that they've been looking for and haven't found since Derrick Henry came into his own, that they tried with Darrington Evans and so on.
Do you have a submission that you like more than another?
I think KJ. I like KJ, Harold Landry.
Harold Landry?
Yeah, just because of the impact that his season can have on the Titans defense. I understand what you're saying about, hey, just be wary. Coming back off an ACL is difficult, but he's going to be out there. And so the expectation is for Harold Landry to lead this pass rush, right?
Yeah.
Opposite Arden Key. It's largely going to be up to those two on the edge. So Harold Landry absolutely has to show that he's back and explosive and healthy.
Okay. Congrats to KJ. You're going to the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix. Turn 9 tickets, 3-day passes to the Turn 9 Club with all-inclusive food from Edley's Barbecue, Poncho and Lefty's, free beer and wine, and all the non-alcoholic beverages that you would like to consume. Access to the IndyCar paddock to get up close and personal with the cars, and of course, all the other benefits that the Turn 9 Club has to offer. Don't be discouraged if we did not give you the tickets. You can be like KJ. You can continue to call in. We'll have different prompts for you for the rest of the week and leading up to the race itself next weekend for you to have the opportunity to win a pair of these tickets. Lucas and I are going to be there. We're very excited to hang out with many of you. And, of course, you can get them, if you can't win them, at MusicCityGP.com. Last call for phone calls, update some polls, and wrap things up for the day. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. All right, so congratulations to KJ, who won the first pair of Turn 9 passes to the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix that we gave away. More throughout the course. Well, I guess there's only one more day this week. How are we going to do this? You're not with me tomorrow. You're on a vacation that you're alleging is not a vacation.
Not my problem.
Okay.
Godspeed.
Thanks, bud. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow on social media. So, maybe I'll use this as an opportunity to bolster my thread count on Threads. I think I will orchestrate a social media giveaway tomorrow. So, give you more details on how we can do that later on. Meanwhile, there is a transaction for the Nashville Soccer Club. Nashville SC plays tonight. As a matter of fact, it's Will Bowling on the call, not Lucas tonight, with Jaleel Anibaba, and you can hear it right here on 104.5 The Zone. What do you need to make people aware of that just happened with the soccer team?
Yeah, Nashville signing its third designated player. For those who don't know, the designated players, essentially every team gets 3 that you can pay above the MLS salary cap. And so those are reserved for your star players. Walker Zimmerman, Hani Mukhtar, and now Sam Surridge, 24-year-old striker from Nottingham Forest that will slide right in, will fit with what Gary Smith wants to do, and be given an opportunity, I imagine, pretty quickly to help this team just putting the ball in the back of the net. And he will be unveiled. They'll announce the signing officially with Surridge in the building tonight at halftime at Geodis Park. But they're kicking off at 7:30, group stage game against Toluca, a Mexican side in Leagues Cup. So if Nashville is able to win in 90 minutes, they get all 3 points. They clinch winning the group, which means home field advantage for the round of 32 next week in Leagues Cup. And if they are able to win in penalty shootout, because the format here is interesting in the group stage, when the game ends and it's a draw, you don't just take 1 point. You play out a penalty shootout. The loser of the shootout, like in hockey, will still take the point. The winner of the penalty shootout gets an extra point, walks away with 2. So if Nashville wins tonight, either in regulation or via penalty shootout, they clinch winning Group C4. And if they do still just take 1 point, they will at least clinch moving on to the group stage. And the winner of the group will depend on what Toluca does against Colorado. But I'm excited for the vibe at Geodis Park tonight with a big Mexican club in town. Last year when Club America, I'll be there, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Last year when Club America was here, one of the biggest clubs in the world out of Mexico City, that was a fun environment. That was a really fun environment. So I'm looking forward to it. 7:30 kickoff. You can hear it on The Zone.
There it is. Polls, please.
Oh, yeah, baby. This poll update is shagadelic, baby. I have a Danger Powers here. I'm Austin Powers. Danger is my middle name, baby. This is one poll I'm interested in, baby. It's shagadelic. I haven't had an update in 2023 yet. Wink, wink. Oh, behave. Take it away, Lucas Panzica. Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. Who is the Titans' starting right tackle for the first 6 weeks of the season? Is it Jamarco Jones? Is it OJ, a.k.a. John Owuku? Or is it a free agent that is TBD? 49% are going with that. Somebody who's not on the team yet. 33% say it's Jones. 18% say OJ.
I mean, if it started today, it would be Jamarco Jones, but I would still venture a right tackle to be named. I think if you gave me 2 players of the field with free agency still obviously operating, I'm going to take the field on that. Not to say that that's any knock on OJ or Jamarco Jones. It's just, percentages are better there.
Snyder is out. So who's the most hated owner in the National Football League? Mahogany says Jim Irsay. Jason says Jerry. Luke says probably the Chargers owner, Spanos, right? I think if you can't think of the name of the owner, he's not the most hated owner in the NFL.
How many people do you think could name the Chargers owner?
Not that many.
Yeah.
Rack says Jerry Jones, and Dwayne says either Jones or Haslam.
Yeah, no, I mean, Dwayne is correct. It's Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam is for sure the most hated owner in the NFL. He's got to be, by consensus, by fans, by fellow ownership for the contract that he gave out.
The dual threat.
Yeah.
The fans for getting a quarterback that is allegedly a sexual predator. The owners for the money that could cost them.
No. There's a lot of that's not alleged at this point. Some of it is still alleged, but the things that we know is that there's a good portion of it that is not.
Which Titans player needs to have the best training camp? Corey Curtis of News 2 says Jamarco Jones. Gary says Malik Willis. Chad says Christian Fulton. Karen also says Christian Fulton. Seems like he might be in Vrabel's doghouse. I get the argument for Christian Fulton, but I feel like Christian Fulton needs to have a good season, a healthy season. Yeah. His availability this season, to me, has much more of an impact than whatever he does in training camp.
I was actually talking to Christian's brother, Keith, about this yesterday at practice. Keith, who runs the sneaker shop that's in my neighborhood, The Trenches. They gave us on the show some really, really cool stuff that we very much appreciate, by the way. But I was talking to Keith about this yesterday, and yeah, man, durability is a tough thing to try and predicate your future on, but that does feel like it is going to be the thing for Christian this year. He has to be available. Has to.
What's your confidence level in the Titans' offensive line? Scale of 1 to 10. Kevin says a 6. Goody says 6.9, strictly because Daly's not there. Barrett says 7. Karen says 4. Majority have been between 6 and 7.
I'm going to say 3. I'm going to go low on that. What I know of these players right now is that most of them have not been good enough to earn starting jobs elsewhere in their careers, and the best thing that they have going for them is a rookie who's playing a position that he's never played. So
the pulse.
I would say a 3 is my confidence level. All right, Blaine and Mickey coming up next. Prime time tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. Check out the install wherever you get your podcasts, and we will talk to you tomorrow right here on The Zone, live from training camp with running back Tajay Spears. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.